Welcome to Group 9's presentation on Aboriginal fighter pilot Len Waters by Kanisha and Deepa. We would like to commence this presentation with an acknowledgement of country. In continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation and in line with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tradition, it is customary to acknowledge country as we pass through. Today we acknowledge and pay our respects to the First Peoples, traditional custodians of the lands and waterways, and thank them for their continued hospitality. We acknowledge and celebrate the continuation of a living culture that has a unique role in this region. We also acknowledge elders, past and present, as well as our emerging leaders of tomorrow, and thank them for their wisdom and guidance as we walk in their footsteps. Len Waters was enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force as an aircraft mechanic in 1942. He was the first and only Aboriginal to serve as a fighter pilot during the Second World War. Len was born on the 20th of June 1924 in New South Wales and was the fourth of 11 children. Waters left school at the age of 14 to work alongside his father as a ringbarker in order to support his family. Len was fascinated by aviation industry from a young age and volunteered his services to the Royal Australian Air Force on the 24th of August 1992. At this time, Aboriginals were banned from enlisting in the military in fear that they may side with the enemy. When Australia became directly attacked and Japan entered World War II, the restriction on Aboriginals was relaxed and Waters was able to come pursue his dream. He undertook training to become a pilot and graduated as a pilot in 1944. Waters joined the No. 78 Squadron, where he flew Kitty Hawks and flew 95 sorties before he was discharged from the Air Force on the 18th of January 1946 with the rank of a warrant officer. He returned to Queensland with the hope of starting a regional airline, but was unable to secure government or financial support. Waters passed away from pneumonia in August 1993 at the age of 69. In 1995 to 1996, Len was commemorated in many ways. Australia Post illustrated his portrait on a stamp with his Kitty Hawk flag as part of an Australian Remembrance series. A 5-story accommodation complex at the Royal Air Force Australia base in Williamstown was named the Len Waters Building in memory of his service. During Len's time, Aboriginals suffered discrimination and disadvantages in Australian society. The photo on this slide is the Kitty Hawk that Len flew as a pilot. Despite his efforts, he returned home as a forgotten hero and became known as a missing man until his death. A book titled Missing Man by author Peter Rees is about Len Waters and his life as a fighter pilot. Peter Rees describes Len as a man who breaks through barriers of poverty, racial discrimination, and limited schooling to realize a boyhood dream to fly. Len Waters was brave and courageous. He inspired the Indigenous community by following his dream of becoming a fighter pilot and receiving commemoration for his service. Despite the large amounts of racism and discrimination occurring at the time, Len still managed to succeed in volunteering his service to the Royal Australian Air Force and complete his training as a pilot, which he had dreamed of since he was younger. The broader Indigenous populations would have been impressed as Len achieved what was seen by many as unthinkable. The photo on this slide is the Australian Post stamp illustrated in remembrance of his service.
Thank you, Kanisha. Now I'm going to present about the social, political, and historical context of Len Waters and how it impacts on him and the strengths. Now I'm going to start from social context and its impact. Len Waters was born in NSW and he was shifted to Queensland as it was difficult for Indigenous people to find jobs in towns and cities because of assimilation. Just can you please record that?